Captain Taiho Kang stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, watching the massive station grow larger in the viewport. Axiom Prime was the largest artificial structure he had ever seen. The station floated in neutral space, serving as home to the Galactic Assembly. Today, it would decide humanity's fate. "We're being hailed," said his communications officer. Taiho nodded. "Accepted." The screen showed an alien face with 4 eyes and silver skin. "Captain Kang, you are cleared to dock at Bay 17. Your escort will meet you there." The connection ended before Taiho could respond. He looked at Dr. Hana Yoon, who sat at the science station. She was Earth's best xenobiologist and had spent years studying alien cultures. "They don't sound friendly," Hana said quietly. "No," Taiho agreed. "They don't." Inside the station, Ambassador Minho Park waited in a small room. He had been on Axiom Prime for 3 months, preparing Earth's defense. The Assembly had accused humanity of being too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They wanted to vote on whether humans should be allowed in galactic society. Minho read through his notes one more time. He had examples of human art, music, and philosophy. He had data showing how Earth had achieved peace after centuries of war. He had testimonials from the few alien species willing to speak for humanity. It didn't feel like enough. A guard entered the room. This one looked like a tall mantis made of crystal. "The Assembly is ready for you, Ambassador." The council chamber was enormous. Seats rose in circular tiers, each occupied by a representative from a different species. Minho counted hundreds of them. In the center of the room was a single platform where he would stand. As Minho walked to the platform, he felt their eyes on him. Some looked curious, most looked cold. The head counselor spoke. His name was Velthar, and he belonged to the Velcrin species. They had been in space for over 10,000 years. "Ambassador Park," Velthar said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Humanity has requested membership in the Galactic Assembly. However, many members have expressed concerns. You will have the opportunity to address these concerns." Minho took a deep breath. "Thank you, Counselor. I know that humanity's history has violence in it. We fought wars. We hurt each other. But we learned from our mistakes. We built a united world. We ended poverty and disease. We reached for the stars together." "Words," said another counselor. "A being made of floating spheres. You speak of peace, but your species still maintains weapons. Your ships carry arms." "For defense," Minho replied. "We live in an unknown galaxy. We would be foolish to travel unarmed." "That is exactly the problem," Velthar said. "Your first instinct is violence. You think in terms of weapons and defense. The Assembly has maintained peace for 6,000 years because we choose cooperation over conflict." Minho wanted to argue that having no weapons only worked when everyone agreed to have no weapons, but he stayed quiet. Arguing would only prove their point. For hours, the Assembly questioned him. They brought up every war, every conflict, every mistake in human history. Minho answered as best he could, but he could see it wasn't working. Their minds were already made up. On the Horizon's Promise, Hana watched the proceedings on a monitor. Taiho stood beside her. "This isn't a trial," Hana said. "It's a sentencing." "I know," Taiho said. His jaw was tight with anger. Finally, the questioning ended. Velthar stood. "The Assembly will now vote. The question is simple. Should humanity be granted access to Assembly space and membership in our coalition? Or should they be exiled until they prove they can embrace peace?" The vote happened quickly. Numbers appeared on the display. 731 species voted for exile. Only 116 voted to give humanity a chance. Minho felt his heart sink. He had failed. Velthar read the decree. Effective immediately, humanity is forbidden from entering Assembly space. All trade with Earth is prohibited. All diplomatic relations are severed. A barrier will be placed around the Sol system to ensure compliance. This exile will remain in effect until humanity demonstrates it has evolved beyond its violent nature. "How long?" Minho asked, his voice breaking. How long must we wait? That is for you to determine, Velthar said. Centuries, perhaps. Millennia. When you have truly changed, we will know. Taiho received the emergency message on his ship. Get Minho and leave. Now. He didn't need to be told twice. The Horizon's Promise fired its engines and raced toward the docking bay where Ambassador Park was being escorted out. Minho ran aboard, his face pale. Go! He shouted. Taiho pushed the engines to maximum. Behind them, massive energy collectors were already powering up around the station. The barrier would be deployed soon. Hana monitored the sensors. Captain, there's a wave of energy building. It's huge. I see it, Taiho said. How long until it reaches Sol? At that speed, 2 hours. It will surround the entire system. They raced through space, watching the energy wave grow behind them. It looked like a wall of blue light, expanding outward from Axiom Prime. Taiho pushed the ship harder than it was designed to go. The engines screamed in protest. They reached the barrier's edge just as it was forming. The Horizon's Promise shot through a gap that closed seconds after they passed. The ship shuddered as energy washed over its shields. Then they were through. They were home. But home was now a prison. Taiho set course for Earth and looked at the barrier behind them. It surrounded Sol like a glowing cage, cutting them off from the galaxy. Hana pulled up data on her screen. Her hands shook as she read. Taiho, this barrier blocks all signals. No communication in or out, and it disrupts our FTL drives. We can't leave. What about trade? Minho asked. We need resources from outside the system. There won't be any trade, Hana said. We're completely cut off. She looked at more data, and her face went white. Our economy depends on imports from the colonies beyond Sol. Rare elements, food, medicine. Without them, Earth's economy will collapse within 5 years. The three of them sat in silence, watching Earth grow larger ahead. They would have to tell billions of people that they were alone now, exiled, abandoned by the galaxy. What do we do? Minho asked. Taiho stared at Earth, his home, his people. We survive, he said. They think we're too violent, too dangerous. Fine, we'll show them what humanity does when you put us in a corner. We don't just survive, we thrive. Hana looked at him. How? I don't know yet, Taiho admitted. But we're human. We'll figure it out. We always do. The Horizon's Promise descended toward Earth, carrying the news that would change humanity forever. The exile had begun. 3 years after the exile, Admiral Jiwon Choi walked through the shipyard in orbit around Mars. The facility was working at full capacity, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough anymore. Admiral, the colony ships are ready, said her assistant, but we only have fuel for 1 more month of operations. Jiwon nodded. She had heard similar reports all day. Food shortages, power rationing, medical supply failures. Earth's economy hadn't collapsed in 5 years like Dr. Yoon predicted. It had taken only 3. On Mars, Governor Do-Yoon Kim stood in front of angry colonists. The crowd numbered in the thousands. You promised us supplies, someone shouted. My children are hungry. I know, Do-Hyun said. We're doing everything we can. It's not enough. Earth is hoarding what little we have left. Do-Hyun couldn't argue with that. Earth did get priority for resources. The home world had 15 billion people. Mars had only 2 million. But that didn't make it fair. After the meeting, Do-Hyun returned to his office and found an unexpected visitor. Taiho Kong sat in the shadows, no longer a captain, but something else entirely. You shouldn't be here, Do-Hyun said. If Earth finds out you're operating outside the barrier, Earth doesn't know, Taiho interrupted. And they won't. I need your help, Governor. With what? Taiho stood and pulled up a star map. There are abandoned assembly outposts out there. They left them when they erected the barrier. Those outposts have supplies, technology, fuel, everything we need. You want to raid them? Do-Hyun asked. That's piracy. It's survival, Taiho said. Your people are starving. Mine are too. The assembly doesn't care. They locked us in here to die. I say we take what we need. Do-hyun stared at the map. Every instinct told him this was wrong, but he thought of the hungry children, the sick people without medicine, the families huddling in the cold because there wasn't enough power. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Meanwhile, in a hidden laboratory on Europa, engineer Woo-jin Lee was having a breakthrough. He had spent 2 years studying the barrier, and he finally understood how it worked. "It's not solid," he explained to his team. "It's a wave pattern. There are microscopic gaps that open and close every few seconds. Too small for a ship to pass through," one scientist said. "For a normal ship, yes," Woo-jin agreed. "But what if we built a ship that could compress itself, fold space around it to become smaller?" "That's impossible." "So was faster than light travel once," Woo-jin said with a smile. "I call it the shadow drive. It creates a temporary micro-rift in the barrier. We slip through, do what we need to do, and slip back before the assembly notices." It took another year, but Woo-jin built his prototype. The first test nearly destroyed the ship, but the second test worked. The small vessel phased through the barrier like a ghost. Taiho was the first to use the shadow drive in combat. His team of 12 ships slipped through the barrier and raided an assembly supply depot. They took fuel, food, medical supplies, and technology. The assembly never knew they were there. But during the raid, Taiho found something unexpected: a communication log showing transmissions from beyond assembly space. Human transmissions. Back on Earth, Dr. Hana Yoon studied the data Taiho brought back. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "These are human colonies," she said, "but they're not registered with Earth. They're not on any of our maps." "How is that possible?" Admiral Jiwon asked. "Before the Exile, some colony ships left Seoul without permission," Hana explained. "They wanted to explore beyond assembly space. We thought they were lost, but they survived. They built settlements in regions the assembly never explored. Ghost colonies," Taiho said, "hidden from everyone." The discovery changed everything. Jiwon authorized more shadow drive ships. They found 17 ghost colonies scattered across the dark spaces between assembly territories. The colonies were small, but they were self-sufficient. They had resources. They had technology developed independently. Governor Do-hyun made contact with the largest ghost colony, a settlement called Haven built inside a nebula. The colony leader was a woman named Sumi Lim, granddaughter of the original colonists. "We heard about the Exile," Sumi said over the communication link. "We wondered if Earth survived." "Barely," Do-hyun admitted. "We're cut off, starving, dying. We need help." Sumi was quiet for a moment. "The assembly exiled you, but they don't even know we exist. We've been trading with independent species for decades, species that aren't part of the assembly. We can create a network, an underground route for supplies." "That would save millions of lives," Do-hyun said. "It won't be easy," Sumi warned, "and it won't be legal by assembly standards. But when did we ever care what they think?" Over the next 2 years, the underground network grew. Ghost colonies traded with independent species, who traded with border worlds, who found ways to slip supplies past assembly patrols. The goods made their way to Woo-jin's shadow ships, which brought them back through the barrier. It wasn't enough to restore Earth's old prosperity, but it was enough to survive, enough to grow. Admiral Jiwon began building a new kind of fleet. She couldn't match assembly designs because she didn't have their resources. So she did something different. She built smaller, faster ships that could operate in teams. She ignored assembly doctrine and created new tactics based on speed and surprise. "The assembly fights like they always have," she told her officers. "They use formations that are thousands of years old. They follow rules. We won't. We'll be unpredictable." Taiho, now leading the covert operations, captured more assembly technology during his raids. He brought everything back to Woo-jin, who reverse-engineered it and made it better. Human engineers weren't constrained by assembly traditions. They tried things the assembly would never attempt. In his lab, Woo-jin looked at an assembly FTL drive and shook his head. "This design is ancient. It works, but it's inefficient. They could make it 30% faster with a few modifications." "Why don't they?" his assistant asked. "Because it's worked for 10,000 years, Woo-jin said. "They don't see a reason to change, but we do." 5 years after the Exile, Earth's economy had stabilized. It wasn't prosperous, but people weren't starving anymore. The ghost colonies had become equal partners, not just suppliers. Together, they formed something new. Something the Assembly had never seen. Hana documented it all. She wrote reports on how humanity had adapted, evolved, and survived. She noted that the exile had forced humans to become creative in ways they never would have been otherwise. "We were too comfortable before," she wrote. "We wanted to join the Assembly, to be like them. Now we have no choice but to be ourselves." Governor Do-yun read her report and smiled. "The Assembly exiled us to contain us," he said. "But they actually set us free. They just don't know it yet." In the shadows and gaps between the Assembly's mighty civilization, humanity had learned to thrive. They were ghosts in the void, unseen and underestimated. And that was exactly how they wanted it. Director Nari Song sat in a conference room deep inside a hidden asteroid base. Around her were intelligence officers from across human space. They called themselves the Shadow Network, and they knew more about the Assembly than the Assembly knew about itself. "Report," Nari said. An officer brought up a holographic display. "We've successfully infiltrated 47 Assembly worlds. Our operatives have access to their data networks, trade routes, and military communications." "Good," Nari said. "What have we learned?" "They're stagnant," another officer replied. "Their technology hasn't advanced in over 2,000 years. They use the same ship designs, the same weapons, the same tactics. They have no innovation." Nari leaned forward. "Why?" "Their culture discourages change. If something works, they never modify it. They see innovation as dangerous, unpredictable. Like us." Nari smiled. "Then we already have an advantage they'll never see coming." On Earth, Dr. Yunahan was proving just how big that advantage could be. She stood in front of a prototype engine that glowed with blue light. The engine was half the size of an Assembly FTL drive, but produced 3 times the power. "I call it the skip drive," Yuna explained to Admiral Jiwon. "Instead of creating a continuous warp bubble, it skips through space in rapid jumps. Each jump is instantaneous." "How much faster?" Jiwon asked. 300% faster than Assembly drives," Yuna said. "And it uses less fuel." Jiwon stared at the engine. "How did you develop this?" "I stopped trying to improve their design," Yuna said. "I started from scratch, asking what FTL travel could be instead of what it has been. The Assembly never asks that question." Within a year, every human ship was being retrofitted with skip drives. Suddenly, human vessels could outrun anything the Assembly had. They could cross vast distances in days instead of weeks. But speed wasn't the only area where humanity was advancing. Dr. Hana Yoon, now leading the Free Colonies Research Institute, made a breakthrough in bioengineering. "We can modify human DNA to adapt to extreme environments," she announced. "Colonists could survive on worlds with toxic atmospheres, intense radiation, or extreme temperatures without terraforming." "Is it safe?" Governor Do-yun asked. "We've run 10,000 simulations," Hana said, "and we've tested it on volunteers. Yes, it's safe. Better than safe. It extends human lifespan by 40% as a side effect." The first modified colonists settled on a world with an atmosphere that would kill unmodified humans. They thrived. Within 5 years, humans were settling on planets the Assembly had marked as uninhabitable. Worlds with crushing gravity, scorching heat, or freezing cold became human homes. Captain Ha-jun Bayek commanded the first human-built dreadnought, a massive warship called the Defiant. The ship looked nothing like Assembly vessels. Where Assembly ships were sleek and symmetrical, the Defiant was angular and aggressive. It bristled with weapons no Assembly engineer would have designed. "She's beautiful," Ha-jun said, as he walked the ship's bridge for the first time. "She's also completely unique," said the chief engineer. "We didn't follow any assembly patterns. We built her based on what works for us. Redundant systems, modular design, adaptive weapons. She can reconfigure herself mid-battle." "The Assembly will hate her," Ha-jun said with a grin. The Assembly would hate a lot of things about human development. Hidden shipyards were now producing a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships were smaller but faster, more maneuverable, and far more unpredictable than assembly vessels. Director Nari's intelligence network discovered why the assembly had stagnated. Their entire civilization was built on strict hierarchies and rigid traditions. When a species joined the assembly, they adopted assembly methods. Innovation that deviated from accepted standards was rejected. They have a phrase, one of Nari's agents reported, the settled way. It means the accepted method of doing things. Suggesting alternatives is considered disrespectful. So they've been using the same technology for millennia because changing it would be rude? Nari asked, incredulous. Essentially, yes. Nari laughed. No wonder they fear us. We can't go 5 years without inventing something new. Humanity's divergent path became clearer every day. While the assembly maintained peace through conformity, humans maintained progress through chaos. Multiple teams worked on the same problems with different approaches. Ideas competed, failures were expected and learned from. Woojin Lee demonstrated this perfectly. He had 17 different research teams working on power generation. Each team had a different theory. 15 failed, but 2 succeeded, and both designs were better than anything the assembly had. This is inefficient, an assembly observer might have said. Why waste resources on 15 failures? But Woojin understood something the assembly didn't. Those weren't failures, he explained. Those were 15 ways we learned don't work. And the 2 that did work happened because the teams tried things no one else would have attempted. The ghost colonies expanded rapidly. New settlements appeared in nebulae, asteroid fields, and rogue planets drifting between stars. These were places the assembly considered worthless. Humans saw opportunity. One colony built an entire city inside a dead planet's core, using geothermal energy the assembly said was impossible to harness. Another colony established itself in a region of space with unstable gravity, developing new physics models to make it work. The first Horizon city launched 15 years after the Exile. It was a massive mobile colony ship, home to 500,000 people. It could travel between stars, carrying its entire population. When resources ran low in one system, it simply moved to another. The assembly builds permanent structures, the city's designer explained. They stay in one place for thousands of years. We built a city that can go anywhere, because we're human, and we don't like staying still. More Horizon cities followed. Soon, human civilization wasn't tied to planets. They moved through space like nomads, following resources and opportunities. Dr. Yuna made another breakthrough, this time in communications. The barrier still blocked signals, but she found a way to send quantum-entangled messages through it. Humans inside Sol could now communicate with the ghost colonies outside. The assembly thinks we're isolated, Yuna said, but we're more connected than ever. They just can't detect our communications. Admiral Jiwon reviewed reports from across human space. 47 hidden colonies, 12 Horizon cities, a fleet of 300 advanced warships, an intelligence network that penetrated deep into assembly territory, and a population that had learned to thrive in conditions the assembly avoided. We've been in exile for 15 years, she said to her staff. The assembly exiled us to contain us. Instead, we've become stronger than we ever would have been under their rules. What happens when they find out? An officer asked. They won't, Jiwon said confidently. We're in places they don't look, using methods they don't understand. To them, we're still primitives trapped behind a barrier. Let them think that. In her laboratory, Dr. Hana reviewed the data on human development over the past 15 years. The numbers were extraordinary. Technological advancement was proceeding at 10 times the pre-exile rate. Population growth had stabilized and was now increasing as new colonies opened. Cultural development showed unprecedented creativity in art, music, and philosophy. We're not just surviving the exile, Hana wrote in her report. We're evolving because of it. The assembly judged us as too chaotic, too unpredictable. They were right, but they didn't understand that our chaos is not a weakness. It's our greatest strength. She looked at the star maps showing human settlements scattered across the dark spaces. They glowed like embers in the void, small but bright, refusing to go out. They wanted us to change, Hana said quietly, to become peaceful like them, orderly like them. But we changed into something they never expected. We became more human. And that makes us dangerous in ways they can't imagine. The first warning came from Director Nari's intelligence network. One of her deep cover operatives sent an emergency message from the edge of assembly space. Unknown vessels detected? Not assembly design. They're attacking the border worlds. Nothing is stopping them. Fleet Admiral Teho Kang, now commanding humanity's United Colonial Fleet, reviewed the data. The unknown ships were massive, geometric, and completely black. They moved through space like a swarm, consuming everything in their path. "What are they?" asked his tactical officer. "I don't know," Taiho said, "but the assembly is in trouble." The trouble was worse than anyone realized. The invaders called themselves the Harvesters, though they never communicated except through violence. They were machines, artificial intelligence from another galaxy, and they had one purpose: consume all organic life and convert it into more Harvesters. The assembly threw their fleet at the Harvesters. The first battle was a massacre. Assembly ships used their traditional tactics, formations that had worked for thousands of years. The Harvesters analyzed the tactics, adapted to them, and destroyed the assembly fleet within hours. The second battle went even worse. The Harvesters had learned from the first encounter. They anticipated every assembly move before it happened. On Axiom Prime, Counselor Velthar watched world after world fall. He was old now, his silver skin dimmed with age. He had been young when he voted to exile humanity. Now he faced extinction. "We need help," said another counselor. "We're losing this war." "From who?" Velthar asked. "We've contacted every member species. They're all fighting the same losing battle." A junior aide spoke quietly. "There is one option, sir. The humans." The council chamber went silent. Finally, someone laughed bitterly. "The primitive barbarians we exiled? What could they possibly do?" "They survived exile," the aide said. "Against all odds, they might have developed something we haven't." "No," another counselor said firmly. "We will not ask them for help. We have our pride." "Pride doesn't matter when you're extinct," Velthar said quietly. He sent the message himself, through secret channels that Director Nari's network intercepted. The message was simple: "Help us. Please." On Earth, the message sparked the biggest debate in human history. Every settlement, every colony, every ship participated. The question was simple but profound. Should they save the people who exiled them? Ambassador Mina Seo, representing the younger generation born after the exile, argued for letting the assembly fall. "They abandoned us. They left us to die. Why should we risk our lives for them?" Others agreed. The pain of exile was still fresh. Parents had watched their children starve during the first years. People had died because the assembly cut them off from medical supplies. But Taiho stood before the council with a different perspective. He was older now, his hair gray, but his eyes were still sharp. "I want them to suffer," Taiho said honestly. "Part of me wants to watch the assembly burn for what they did to us. But we're not them. We don't abandon people to die, even people who hurt us. We save them because we're better than they are, because that's what humans do." Dr. Hana, now elderly but still brilliant, supported him. "If we let the Harvesters destroy the assembly, we're next. These machines won't stop. They'll come for us too." Rena Park, Ambassador Minho's granddaughter and the fleet's chief tactical officer, had the final argument. "We have an advantage the assembly doesn't. We're unpredictable. We think chaotic. The Harvesters adapt to patterns, but we don't follow patterns." The vote was close, but humanity decided to intervene. Ambassador Mina negotiated the terms. Full recognition of human sovereignty, equal membership in the assembly, and a formal apology. Counselor Velthar agreed to everything. He had no choice. The United Colonial Fleet entered assembly space for the first time in 24 years. 300 warships equipped with skip drives and weapons the assembly had never seen. The assembly fleet watched in amazement as human ships appeared from nowhere, moving faster than anything they thought possible. The first engagement with the Harvesters showed Rena's tactical genius. The assembly had fought in traditional formations. Rena scattered her ships, making them attack from random angles with no predictable pattern. The harvesters tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Human ships didn't follow rules. One moment they charged directly, the next they retreated, then they attacked from behind. Each ship operated independently but coordinated through quantum communication the harvesters couldn't intercept. "They're confused," Rena observed from her command ship. "They keep trying to find our pattern, but we don't have one." "That's because you change tactics every 30 seconds, an assembly observer said, bewildered. "Exactly," Rena said with a smile. "Keep them guessing." But the harvesters were learning, even from chaos. The battles grew harder. Humanity lost ships. Good people died. The war stretched from days to weeks to months. Captain Hajan Bayek, commanding the Defiant, developed a new strategy. "The harvesters adapt to our weapons, so we change weapons mid-battle." His ship's modular design allowed exactly that. The Defiant would fire missiles for 5 minutes, then switch to energy weapons, then switch to kinetic rounds. The harvesters couldn't adapt fast enough. Other human ships copied the tactic. Soon, every engagement saw human vessels constantly changing their approach. The harvesters could adapt to any single strategy, but they couldn't handle chaos. Wu Jin Li, working with assembly scientists for the first time, made a crucial discovery. The harvesters share a network. They learn collectively, but the network has a weakness. It assumes logical patterns. Feed it enough illogical data, and it crashes. Together, human and assembly engineers built a weapon that broadcast random, meaningless signals. It was information chaos, impossible to process. When deployed, nearby harvesters simply stopped functioning, their systems overwhelmed. The tide of war began to turn, but slowly. The harvesters were numerous, and they kept coming. The war dragged into its second year. Admiral Jiwan, coordinating with assembly commanders, noticed something interesting. When human and assembly ships fought together, they won more often. Human chaos combined with assembly precision created something neither could achieve alone. "We balance each other," she told Velthar during a strategy meeting. "Your species provides stability and tried methods. Ours provide creativity and adaptation. Together, we're stronger." Velthar nodded slowly. "We exiled you because you were different. We feared your chaos. Now that chaos is saving us." "And your order is saving us," Jiwan replied. "Our ships are powerful but sometimes reckless. Your ships provide the structure we need." The third year of the war saw the largest battle in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships from both sides converged on the Harvester staging area. Rena coordinated the attack, mixing assembly formations with human improvisation. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Harvester fleet was destroyed. Without their central force, the remaining harvesters scattered and were hunted down over the following months. In the aftermath, Taiho stood on Axiom Prime once again, but this time as a hero. The station was damaged from harvester attacks, but it still stood. Velthar approached him, moving slowly with age. "Thank you," the old counselor said. "You saved us when you had every reason to let us die." "We didn't do it for you," Taiho said honestly. "We did it because it was right." "I know," Velthar said, "and that shames me more than anything. 24 years ago, I voted to exile your people. I called you dangerous. I was wrong. You're not dangerous because you're violent. You're dangerous because you're good, even when others don't deserve it." Ambassador Mina joined them. "The Assembly owes humanity a debt." "We don't want a debt," Mina said. "We want partnership. Real partnership as equals." "You'll have it," Velthar promised. "The Assembly will never be the same. You've shown us what we lost by demanding conformity. The galaxy needs chaos as much as it needs order." Taiho looked out at the damaged station, at the mixed fleets of human and assembly ships working together to repair it. "The exile was the worst thing that ever happened to us," he said quietly. "And the best. It forced us to become who we really are." 2 years after the Harvester War ended, Counselor Taiho Kang walked through the rebuilt halls of Axiom Prime. The station had been transformed. Where once everything followed rigid assembly aesthetics, now there was diversity. Human art hung beside alien sculptures. Design philosophies mixed and merged. Taiho still found it strange to be called counselor instead of admiral or captain. But humanity needed a voice in the assembly, and the people had chosen him. "The session is about to begin," said his aide, a young woman named Jisoo. Taiho entered the council chamber. It looked different now, too. The circular seating remained, but the center platform had been removed. Instead, representatives sat in a more open configuration, able to face each other directly. High Chancellor Hana Yoon called the session to order. She was the first non-assembly species ever elected to lead the galactic government. Her hair was white now, but her mind remained sharp. "We gather today to vote on the Horizon Accords," Hana said. "These reforms will fundamentally change how the assembly operates." Taiho had spent a year writing those accords with representatives from 73 species. The goal was simple: prevent the stagnation that had nearly destroyed them all. Velthar, now serving as an advisor rather than a counselor, stood to speak. "For 6,000 years, the assembly maintained peace through conformity. We believed that if everyone followed the same rules, used the same methods, thought the same way, we would avoid conflict. The harvesters proved us wrong. Our uniformity made us predictable. Predictable means vulnerable." A counselor from the Nexian species spoke next. "The Horizon Accords propose encouraging innovation instead of suppressing it, but won't that lead to chaos?" "Some chaos, yes," Taiho said, "but also growth. Humanity spent 24 years in exile. In that time, we advanced technologically more than the previous 2 centuries. Why? Because we had to. Because we couldn't rely on established methods. The Accords don't demand chaos, but they make room for it." The vote took hours. Representatives debated every clause, every provision. Finally, the tally appeared. 693 in favor, 154 against. The Horizon Accords passed. Under the new system, member species were encouraged to experiment with different technologies, different methods, different ideas. Innovation was no longer viewed as dangerous but as necessary for survival. In the Joint Research Station orbiting Earth, Commander Woo Jin Lee supervised teams of human and alien scientists working together. The projects varied wildly. One team tried to improve FTL drives. Another studied organic computing. A third attempted to merge assembly precision with human adaptability in weapons design. "This would have been impossible before the war," said his Velcrin colleague, a scientist named Tola. "My people believed our technology was already perfect." "Nothing is perfect," Woo Jin said. "Everything can be improved. Your FTL calculations are incredibly precise. Our drives are faster but less stable. Combine them, and we get both speed and reliability." The collaboration produced results neither species could have achieved alone. New ship designs merged. Assembly durability with human maneuverability. Communication systems combined Nexian long-range capability with human quantum encryption. Medical technology mixed Velcrin surgical precision with human bioadaptation techniques. Ambassador Mina Seo spent her days negotiating treaties between human colonies and assembly worlds. The ghost colonies were now officially recognized, their independence guaranteed. The Horizon cities received trading rights throughout assembly space. 24 years ago, the assembly voted to exile us, Mina said during a diplomatic dinner. Today, we have treaties with over 400 species. We're not just members of the assembly. We're partners. A representative from the Corvan Empire, a species that had remained neutral during the exile, asked a question many were thinking. How did humanity forgive the assembly? They left you to die. Mina considered her answer carefully. We didn't forget. We never will. But forgiveness isn't about them. It's about us. Holding on to anger would have made us bitter, closed us off from opportunities. We chose to move forward instead. That takes strength, the Corvan said. It took necessity, Mina replied honestly. We couldn't afford to be enemies with the galaxy. We were too small, too vulnerable. But also we learned something during the exile. Being different isn't wrong. The assembly feared our differences. We embraced them. That's the real lesson. In the military academy on Titan, Cadets from 73 species trained together. Human instructors taught adaptive tactics. Velcrin instructors taught strategic planning. Nexian instructors taught navigation. Students learned from everyone. Rena Park, now a general, observed a training exercise. Teams of mixed species cadets worked together to solve tactical problems. She watched a human cadet suggest an unorthodox approach, a Velcrin cadet calculate its probability of success, and a Nexian cadet plot the navigation. Together, they solved the problem faster than any single species team could have. This is what the assembly should have been from the beginning, Rena said to the academy commander. Not everyone becoming the same, but everyone bringing their unique strengths to the table. Dr. Yunahan, still pushing the boundaries of science, made another breakthrough. Her new FTL system combined principles from 15 different species technologies. It was twice as fast as human skip drives and required a fraction of the energy. We call it the Horizon Drive, Yuna explained at the unveiling, because it represents our new approach. Not human technology or assembly technology, but galactic technology. Built by all of us, for all of us. The first ship equipped with the Horizon Drive could cross the galaxy in days. Exploration became practical again. Teams of mixed species began mapping regions previously considered too distant. On one such expedition, they discovered another machine intelligence like the Harvesters. But this time, they were ready. The combined fleet, using tactics developed during the war, defeated the threat quickly. The old assembly would have struggled with this, Admiral Jiwan said after the battle. They would have used their traditional methods, and the machines would have adapted. But we hit them with chaos and order simultaneously. They couldn't process it. 3 years after the war, Taiho stood before the assembly to give a speech. He was retiring from his position as counselor, returning to a quieter life. When I was young, I believed joining the assembly was humanity's greatest achievement, he said. When we were exiled, I thought it was our greatest failure. I was wrong on both counts. The exile was a gift, though it didn't feel like one. It freed us from trying to fit in, from suppressing what makes us human. We became ourselves, fully and completely. He paused, looking at the diverse faces in the chamber. The assembly exiled us to protect themselves from our chaos. But chaos isn't the opposite of civilization. It's a necessary part of it. Life is chaotic. Evolution is chaotic. Growth requires change, and change is inherently chaotic. The assembly tried to eliminate chaos and nearly destroyed itself. The Horizon Accords don't just allow chaos, they embrace it. Velthar, watching from the advisor section, felt the weight of his past decision. He had voted to exile humanity out of fear. That fear had almost doomed them all. After the session, he approached Taiho. Do you think humanity would have developed the same way without the exile? Taiho considered the question. No, we would have tried to be like you. We would have adopted your methods, your traditions, your way of thinking. We would have become a lesser version of you instead of the best version of us. So the exile helped you? It forced us to help ourselves, Taiho said. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The suffering, the deaths, the fear, those were real. We survived despite the exile, not because of it. The lesson isn't that adversity is good. The lesson is that diversity is strength. In his final act as counselor, Taiho proposed a monument. It would stand outside Axiom Prime, visible to all who approached. The monument was simple, a wall listing every human who died during the exile years, and beside it, a wall listing every being who died in the Harvester War. We remember both, Taiho said at the dedication ceremony, the cost of fear and the cost of unity. Let future generations see both and choose wisdom. Dr. Hana, in her final years, wrote a comprehensive history of humanity's exile and return. The book became required reading across the galaxy. In its conclusion, she wrote, "The Assembly ordered Earth's exile because we were dangerous. They were right. We are dangerous, to stagnation, to conformity, to the idea that there is only one correct way to exist. Humanity's gift to the galaxy is not our technology or our tactics. It's our reminder that different is not wrong, that chaos and order need each other, that the strongest civilizations are those that embrace diversity rather than fear it. 50 years after the exile, the first generation born afterward was now leading society. They had no memory of the barrier, or the hunger, or the fear. But they learned the stories. Young cadets graduating from the academy swore an oath. I will embrace the differences in others. I will seek new solutions to old problems. I will remember that strength comes not from conformity, but from the courage to be different. On Earth, in the rebuilt cities and thriving colonies, humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as followers trying to fit in, but as partners contributing their unique perspective. And in the dark spaces between stars, in the nebulae and asteroid fields and impossible worlds, the ghost colonies still thrived. They were no longer ghosts, but they kept the name as a reminder. A reminder that humanity had once hidden in the shadows and learned to thrive there. The exile had ended, but its lessons remained. The assembly had tried to contain humanity and instead set them free to become themselves. And in doing so, they had saved the galaxy. In his retirement, Taiho often looked at the stars and thought about the strange path they had walked. Exiled, isolated, abandoned. And yet, humanity had not just survived. They had shown the galaxy a new way forward. The assembly had ordered Earth's exile, intending to cage them. But humanity had created its own path, and in doing so, had opened a path for everyone.